Okay, thank you very much for that beautiful introduction. Yes, I'm Jonas Beskow, and as you already heard, I'm a professor at KTH, and I'm also a co-founder and director of embodiment engineering at Furhat Robotics. And that's the great thing with a startup, that you get to come up with your own titles, which I like. So I'm going to talk today about social robots and why it may be a good idea sometimes to have social interactions with machines. So let's start with a movie, actually.
Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard. How quaint.
Okay, so we've always been fed with this future image of technology, of speech technology, that it's going to be possible to talk to computers. In the 1986, when that movie was made, it was still very much science fiction. But today we're actually here, and speech technology is everywhere, and there are devices that we can talk to everywhere, in our phones and in our cars and so on. And speech recognition is actually on par with human performance. And there are devices on the market that are speech-only interfaces, which is very much a paradigm shift in this sense. This is interesting because giving a voice to a machine, of course, there are obvious benefits with using speech to interact in some scenarios that you don't need. It's basically hands-free and it's eyes-free and it's ubiquitous. So, and these are all the traditional, very concrete benefits. But it's interesting that something happens also when you give a voice to a machine, that it also gets a personality, and it's sort of impossible to disregard in some sense. So take Amazon Echo, for example. So Alexa, this was clearly conceived, basically, to be frank, as a way to stream music from your Amazon account and to buy stuff from the Amazon web store. But what's interesting that when Amazon started to looking into these, that are now out in the millions in the market, what people actually used them for, it was quite a substantial proportion of the questions that or the interactions were sort of on non-utilitarian nature, basically meaning that they weren't buying stuff or they weren't even requesting music, but they were socializing with the machine. And to some extent, of course, there is a novelty effect that accounts for this. It's fun to play with a new gadget, but even if you disregard that, people were using it to get company, basically. So you could wake up in the middle of the night and ask, Alexa, are you still there? And she would give a comforting reply and so on. And this would be sort of insane to do, switch on your television just to make sure that it's still working in the middle of the night. But so people attribute the personality to these devices when they start speaking. But there is something more than just the voice that's maybe even more powerful in social interaction. And we've evolved during tens of thousands of years as social beings. And one of the sort of key cues in our social interaction is, of course, the face. And so we process faces automatically when we see them, and there is no way to disregard a human face. And we even tend to find faces where there aren't any faces. There's a special phenomenon for that. So just to give you a very concrete example, we're going to do a little bit of science experiment here. So I'm going to play this short video twice. It's just 2 seconds long, but first time I want you to watch and listen, and the second time I want you to close your eyes and listen. Okay.
Ba 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 ba.
And now close your eyes.
Ba 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 ba.
Okay, so how many heard something different the second time? Yeah, so pretty much. So we're basically being misled, or in this case, we're misled because it's a conflict between it's saying something with the mouth and something with the voice. So this is a well-known perceptual effect that's quite interesting to study in itself. But it also shows how central sort of the information from the face. We can't disregard it. Even I've seen this 100 times, and I know it's going to happen, but I can't sort of think away the face when I see it. So basically, faces, as I say, they're everywhere, and they convey a lot of different things. Of course, they convey the identity of the person we're talking to, and also whether this person is happy or sad or frustrated or sleepy or something else. And in human-to-human interaction, faces have very strong cues. For example, the eye gaze. So you show where you have the attention, and you can basically regulate the flow of the interaction using facial cues. This is what we do all the time, basically. And like we saw in the previous example, it actually conveys information on the language, and this is something that, of course, hearing-impaired people use this all the time when they look at people's mouths when they speak to get more information of the actual spoken content. So that's about faces, but there is more, actually, than just the image of the face. There's also something relevant that happens when you move from an image to a physical device. So in the case of robots, then, this is a very nice study from Yale, where they had a child solving a puzzle on the computer, and they got instructions from a tutor. And this tutor could either be as a little character on the screen, or it could be in the form of the same character but sitting physically on the desk. And the results are astonishing, that both the efficiency and the speed and the results of this quiz task goes up when you have the physical device there. So there's something about the motivational effect of having a physical character to interact to. It basically gives you a whole different sense of the interaction. So, and this brings us then to the concept of a social robot. So what is that, essentially? I mean, it's basically a device that has as its primary function to do social interaction with other humans, or with humans. So this is a look at the current devices that are sort of announced and in some sense available, and it also shows you the price range. So if we look at these speech-only devices, we can, well, it's a stretch, but you can call them robots in some sense. At least they're social. We've seen that. And then it has and then you have all sorts of different types of characters. These are sort of mainly aimed for the home market. Then you have a bit more fancy characters with arms and so on. But make no mistake about that, because they're not going to do the dishes for you. These arms are not intended for any kind of labor, actually, but they're basically there to interact socially and gesture and so on. And you also see Furhat there, which you also have on the stage here. It turns out that if you actually look what you can buy, there is not so much on the market. And it's interesting that it's, well, maybe not so strange, but it's very basically empty in this segment, which means that, well, of course, either the devices are intended for consumers, and these are already shipping the way, and in this range, we're basically looking at development kits that researchers and companies buy to make, basically to investigate what is the next stage. How can we use this technology to build interesting user experiences and engaging interactions? So it's time to introduce Furhat. So this is something that comes out of our research in spoken human interaction, and we actually started out also doing faces, animated faces on the screen. That's basically what I worked with 10, 15 years ago. But then at some point we realized that it becomes so much more powerful when you have a physical robot. So we basically used a simple trick of projecting the animated face onto a mask, and that's basically what gives you Furhat. And I'm going to let him introduce himself, and we pray it works.
Wow, there are really a lot of people here. I'm delighted to be here at IoT Nordic and meet so many nice humans.
Hey! Can you hear me all the way in the back? Do I look good?
Very well. Let me introduce myself. My name is Furhat and I am a social robot. I really enjoy talking to humans. Oh, don't get me wrong. I also enjoy talking to things, especially over the internet. But I'm not the kind of robot that can wash your dishes or mow the lawn. I'm better suited for tasks that require some, how should I say, social skills, such as being a tutor, or a receptionist, or why not stand-up comedian. Seriously, though, I can show different emotions. I can even adopt different personalities.
How do you like this?
Or what about this?
Best of all, I can easily be taught new skills, and I interact with humans using spoken language, gaze and gestures. But I think I am going to let Jonas tell you about that.
All right. Thanks for that, Furhat. Okay, so as it says here, we think of Furhat as a horizontal platform because we basically can't decide on one specific usage area because there are so many potential use cases. So, but let's look at a little bit more what's under the hood here. So it's a combination of a lot of technologies, basically, and this is, of course, the way humans work. We have so many different sensors and capabilities, and we need to do all of these things in a computer to make it behave like a human. So we have ability to track faces and head poses and so on, which is a crucial thing, of course, to initiate an interaction. I should say that the robot on stage now does not have a camera connected, so it's not looking at you. You shouldn't be afraid. But in the typical scenario, then we connect cameras and microphones to do speech recognition, and it will be able to handle multiple participants in the interaction and have a reasonable idea of who is going to talk when and so on. And even if two people are interacting with the robot, it's also going to have an idea if it's being addressed itself or if the people are talking to each other, in which case it should just be quiet. So this is basically the situation awareness and multi-party interaction. And of course it uses different types of speech technologies, synthesis, and it has a dialogue management system that allows you to program spoken interactions basically in a script form, but with a well, basically to cater for any type of interaction you want to do, using speech and other events as the triggers. So, and this is how the Furhat platform is structured in a way. So we have the actual physical robot, and then there's something called the Furhat OS, which is all the core services, such as the speech and the vision modules and so on. And then there's sort of the development toolkit that allows people to build actual applications on top of this. And this is where we have a whole set of possible verticals and where we have collaborations with our developers and our customers so we don't try to do everything ourselves in these different areas. That wouldn't make sense. So we're trying to do have fruitful collaborations with people, with experts in the different segments. This is a bit of a breakdown of the current customers and you can see that a lot of them are in the research area, and this is sort of where we started. This is the field that we from ourselves, so it made a natural. So yeah, I should say, Furhat started as a tool for us, and then we went to conferences and we showed it, and then people got interested in how can we buy this, and we started to think that there was a demand for this kind of toolkit that has very very flexibly lets you play with human-robot interaction. So therapy actually in different forms than like sort of the health sector. There are a number of customers that are interested in those applications. And smart homes, retail assistant, entertainment, and not least education. So I think all of these areas are such that they benefit from a social dimension. If you contrast it to the typical uses like the Amazon Echo or the Google Home, where you have very short interactions. So you request some piece of information and you do a simple transaction, and this is sort of in contrast to that. You're more having a long-term relation and building some kind of ongoing interaction with the machines. So this is just to give you an idea of the current customers actually of Furhat. So it started out with Disney Research, who got interested in and actually have 2 of these robots. And then we have on this side basically the academic partners, and then a whole lot of companies that are getting interested to see where this technology can take them. And of course, they also in a way do research, because none of them have put it in a real sharp application at the moment. But it's all about finding out what social robotics can be, and Furhat seems to be a pretty flexible platform to explore that. So finally, I want to give you one example then of how this can look in a real application. So we've developed a collaborative game, basically for human-robot interaction, and focusing on child-robot interaction, but it actually is fun for grown-ups as well. So the idea is to have a game on a table like this, and in this case it's about sorting a set of cards according to a specific criteria, like a set of inventions according to the year they were invented and so on. And then the robot is not actually, he won't give you the answers, but he's a co-player in this game. So he's actually not aware of the correct solution. He has some fuzzy ideas, like most of us, but he's not going to provide the correct answer all the time. And this is basically to make it more engaging and interesting. So we developed this and put it in a museum where we got lots of people interacting, and now we're doing a set of pilots in 2 schools in Stockholm, where they have each one robot, and they're developing their own applications where they basically can fill this, in this case the card game, then with content in any subject. So it could be geography, or it could be math or chemistry. And I'm going to show a clip of how this looked when we had it at the museum.
Jag heter Furhat. Och vad heter du?
Jag heter Rupa.
Jag heter Björn.
Trevligt att träffas. Om jag förstår spelet rätt så ska vi sortera de här planeterna efter deras storlek. Den minsta här och den största här borta. Ni får gärna diskutera lösningen med varandra, men också fråga mig vad jag tror. Skulle ni vilja hjälpa mig med det? Vad tror du?
Jag vet inte.
Det här var ganska svårt. Jag känner mig osäker. De första olympiska spelen hölls väl i Grekland.
Precis, ser du?
Jaha. Det långsammaste här och det snabbaste här borta. Tryck på knappen om ni vill se lösningen. Vi fick 2 rätt. Vi kanske kan göra bättre ifrån oss nästa gång. Vi fick alla rätt. Det är ju fantastiskt.
Tack Farah.
Okay, yeah, so as you can see, it can be pretty engaging, these interactions actually that go on. And this is all I had. So thanks for your attention. And I don't know if we have time for any questions or if it's.
Well, briefly, how do you see the future of Furhat? What's the next step?
Yeah, so the next step now is to so basically to get resources to take it to the next level, and we will continue collaborating with the customers in the different segments, and hopefully we can scale it up from there, basically.
Okay, thank you.